I was talking to recently about standing meditation, and Jim is smiling. I hope you don't mind if call you out, but Jim and I were having a conversation um, about meditation practice and how sometimes it can be a little hard on the back, right? It can be a little hard on the spine to sit unmoving for any length of time, and often our practices will last for 30 minutes. Sometimes a little longer than that, maybe a little shorter, but um, and it occurred to me that we haven't talked a whole lot about the other postures in meditation, in mindfulness. Now, in the Satipatthana Sutra, the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness, this was his 10th discourse. And actually, one of the first teachings he gave that lays out a very practical path to meditation in four foundations, which some of us have talked about before. And just as a sort of a quick recap, the four foundations of mindfulness involve, as we sit to practice, mindfulness of body is the first foundation, and that includes breathing. It includes postures, of which there are four that the Buddha outlined, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Meditating on the sense spheres, what he calls the sense spheres, the elements, the four elements, which we've done before: earth, water, fire, and space or air. Um, and then the second foundation is feelings, where we meditate on sensations and just kind of notice how the energy is playing out in the body. Where is it going? Where do we notice it? Are we feeling agitated or calm? But we use the feeling sense as an object of our practice. And then mind, mental activity is the third foundation of mindfulness. So things like thoughts. Interestingly, the Hindus, the Indians, and the Buddha, in many of those traditions, included emotions under mind, under thinking. And so often, we often see emotions sort of under that category of mind. And yet, in my experience, it's also very much part of feelings. So not to worry too much about those categories for now. So mind, thoughts, cognitions, perceptions, reactions, stories, narratives, all those things. And then the fourth foundation is the beginning of what we call vipassana. It is insight. So if some of you have practiced in the insight tradition, what we call vipassana, that begins with the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And that is where we begin to start seeing the relationship between the first three foundations of our practice and how they affect us. Largely, how do they contribute to our suffering, and what part of us is able to meet these qualities without suffering? What part of us is impermanent? What part of us noticing the changes, the vicissitudes of mind and consciousness, and that which does not change, which is this underlying ground of our being, otherwise known as a Buddha nature or the underlying nature of mind. Um, so that's kind of a quick recap of the four foundations of mindfulness. And if we come back to the very first one, mindfulness of body, the Buddha says there are four postures in which we practice. The first one being seated meditation. And so I'm sure many of you appear as if you're seated. Often that relates to the lotus posture, Padmasana, where your legs are crossed, but it can also be sitting in a chair, um, perhaps reclining a bit. But the object in seated posture and in all the postures is to have your spine upright. Um, so seated meditation. The second one is walking. Actually, I believe walking is the first outlined in that text. So some of you may have done walking meditation. I know Marie has led us on walking meditation a couple of times during our day retreats. And basically, we're encouraged not just to sit in complete and utter stillness, but also to bring the qualities of mindfulness into every step we take. And so that too can be a practice. There was someone who used to come and practice with us who had terrible restless leg syndrome, which I had last year for quite a while. It was pretty bad. Um, And it's considered a sleep disorder because the second you finally let go and relinquish into kind of the sleep state, the first stage of sleep, your legs get these like electric sensations moving through them, pinpricks, like you're being stuck with a pin. I don't know if any one of you have had that, but it's terribly disruptive. And I was getting like 2 hours of sleep a night if I was lucky for a while. So um, they think, by the way, that it can be related to a magnesium deficiency. So it's actually cleared up since I started doing that, and a few other remedies, including medical marijuana, which was extremely helpful. It was a lifesaver for me, which is legal here in Massachusetts. Um, so anyway, so those so that second anyway, so there was a student, a meditation student, who had such bad restless leg syndrome that she couldn't even sit in meditation during our sittings for, even for 15 minutes. And so I mentioned to her, we were at that time meeting in a yoga studio, that it's okay to get up and walk behind us and just do walking meditation, bring that into your practice, right? So walking meditation, the Buddha taught this is important. And lying down, so reclining. If you've ever seen images of the reclining Buddha where he's sort of lying on his side, often in Thailand, you may see these images more so than in Tibet. Um, so lying down meditation, and often the body scan, where you do the progressive muscle relaxation from the tips of your toes all the way up the legs and so on, all the way up through the arms and to the top of the head, is often taught lying down. Now, that's a practice that evolved later on, I think in the 1970s, specifically body scan. But largely, it's the same thing as mindfulness, lying down. Um, and then the other posture is standing meditation. Now, one of the reasons that scholars think that the Buddha taught these four postures is that it's not just about cultivating stillness, but it's also about sort of attenuating or lessening reactivity while you are in motion. So cultivating mindfulness in movement in your everyday life. So um, in the yoga tradition, you have a posture called Tadasana, which is mountain pose. Jim and I explored this together too the other day. We were deep in a conversation about uh, whether mountain pose has the arms down by the side or whether they're up overhead. Turns out, apparently they're both. I don't know if any of you know technically where the arms are during mountain pose. Yeah, down by the sides, Marie, right? Yeah. So anyway, so I encourage you, I mean, if you're ever on a call and sitting is difficult, it's okay to stand up and practice. Now, most people in a meditation hall will tell you to sit back down, I would imagine, if you're on a retreat or such. But in general, it's okay to practice meditation or slash mindfulness in any of these postures. And so that was as taught by the Buddha.